10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The story is based on true events revolving around Zong massacre trials in the 1780s, a junction in history that is going to be a catalyst for the abolition of the institution of slavery for good. The movie starts with an unconventional event almost a decade before Zong massacre. Sir John Lindsay, a senior officer of the Royal Navy, gets off a carriage near ship docks in West Indies. He is here to pick up his daughter, whom he had from a black enslaved woman, Maria Bell, when he was in West Indies as a captain during wartime. He looks at her and says she is as beautiful as her mother. He promises her a good life. The child comes forward to take the chocolate her father offers to her. He laughs affectionately at her enjoying the sweet. John Lindsay carries her in his arms to his carriage. Every white and black man at the harbor turns their head at a white naval officer carrying a black child. There seems to be no place of honor for a black child, an illegitimate one at that. John Lindsay is taking his daughter to Kenwood House in a posh area of London. He is going to entrust her to the custody of his uncle, Lord Mansfield William Murray, 1st Earl of Mansfield, who is a brother of John Lindsay's mother. Lord Mansfield is residing in Kenwood House with his wife Lady Mansfield Elizabeth Finch, and has no children of their own. They are bringing up his niece, Lady Elizabeth Murray, who is a daughter of David Murray from his deceased first wife. David Murray is the only son of Lord Mansfield's brother. He is remarried and has left his daughter under the care of his uncle. John Lindsay is standing in a room with his daughter beside him, requesting Lord Mansfield to take his daughter into his home. Lady Mansfield says it isn't an appropriate thing to do. John argues that she is his daughter, and hence can be accepted as a part of the family. Everybody is nothing but repulsed at the idea of it. There is only one reason not to take in the little girl, and that's because she's black. John pleads again, saying he must leave the country for his next expedition, and he wants his daughter to be in safe hands while he is away. Lord Mansfield reminds John that he is Lord Chief Justice of the King's Bench, and of all families, an aristocratic family like Murray's can't have a black child under their roof. He calls her a mulatto, a derogatory term for a child of mixed race. Lady Mansfield's heart softens. She asks John what the girl's name is. John says it is Dido Elizabeth Bell Lindsay. He has named her Bell, after her deceased mother. Lord Mansfield isn't happy with John giving his family name to a mixed race person. Lady Mansfield says they will call her Dido. He asks the housemaid, Mary, to give Dido something to eat. The shocked Mary tends to the order. John leaves, saying goodbye to Dido, and telling her that he loves her the way he loved her mother. Little Elizabeth Murray comes running after Dido and Mary. Elizabeth is inquisitive about Dido being black. Mary asks Elizabeth not to be annoying. She always speaks her mind like her father. Mary chases the naughty Elizabeth who has teased her more. Belle, on her own in the hallway now, turns around to see a large portrait of a white man with a black boy. Lord Mansfield is passing by in the hallway. His gaze has mellowness for the little black girl. He offers to show her more of the portraits. He shows her his first, then goes on to show her the portrait of Sir David Murray, the father of Elizabeth. Lord Mansfield says, with indignation, that David Murray will be his successor. Lord Mansfield and Lady Mansfield are looking at their two nieces playing together without a care. But the racial discrimination has made the future unpredictable for one of them. Lord Mansfield and his wife are worried for Dido's security. The two girls grow into young ladies, playing together and laughing together under one roof. It has been nearly 2 decades now, since Dido stepped into Kenwood House. Lord Mansfield informs her of her father's death. Dido is sad, because she never got enough time with her father to get to know him better. He has left her a lump sum amount in inheritance and an enviable annuity. Elizabeth says Dido is lucky to have that much to her name. She says Dido can marry whomever she wants. She is a rich woman now. But the father didn't leave anything to Elizabeth, so Elizabeth is left with nothing. Both girls are embroidering with Mary when she informs them about some guests coming over for dinner tonight. Elizabeth's and Dido's excitement dies when Mary says Dido can't sit with the guests at dinner table, as per custom. Dido doesn't object. She is allowed to join them for coffee afterwards, nonetheless. Dido asks Lord Mansfield, whom she has come to address as Papa, why she still can't be at the dinner table with guests. After all, she owns a good fortune now. Lord Mansfield explains to her that wealth does elevate a person's status in society, but a norm so deeply ingrained as racial discrimination can overtake that. Elizabeth wants to dine with Dido instead of dining with such guests, but upon learning that the guests are fine young men, she is happy to join. Mary warns her not to speak in anything but English. Mary disapproves of French people and French language. The family is having dinner with the guests, Lady Ashford with his son James and Oliver. Lady Ashford mentions Zong massacre trial case, which Lord Mansfield is responsible for. She doesn't like the fact that he is taking so much time in giving the verdict, for something as clear-cut as this case. Lord Mansfield argues that it isn't that simple, since law needs scrutiny prior to being imposed. Lady Ashford's tone is full of aversion, when she refers to how the 130 jettisoned as dead cargo, gave rise to the conflict. Lord Mansfield thinks the actual problem isn't that. To him, it is to keep England's commercial laws intact for the economy of its people. Meanwhile, Dido is strolling in the garden, when she is startled by approaching steps behind her. She runs inside to warn a house servant of a suspected rustler near the house. The servant opens the main door, and the suspect turns out to be a gentleman, who introduces himself as John Davenier. He apologizes to Dido for disturbing her like that. He hands over a letter to the servant. It is meant for Lord Mansfield from John's father, Reverend Davenier. Dido turns her back to Davenier, not happy about being talked directly to. Lord Mansfield introduces Dido as Miss Dido Lindsay to his guests after dinner. They are taken aback, seeing a black girl dressed and well-behaved like any white, honorable woman. James is nauseated to be in the company of a black person, referring to her by an offensive term. On the other hand, Oliver finds her amusing. Elizabeth whispers in Dido's ear, telling her that James is heir to his family's immense wealth. Everyone is having tea and listening to Elizabeth sing for England while she plays the piano. James is beaming and looking at Elizabeth, who is a white woman he can accept as a wife. Nearby, Oliver is stealing glances at Dido, who catches his eyes and smiles. Lady Ashford notices and whispers to Oliver that she will never accept a mixed-race woman as a wife for him, so he better not get involved with Dido. Oliver tells her mother that Dido is left with a lot of money. It is just that she is pretty to look at, and nothing more. The moment Elizabeth finishes playing, Oliver asks Dido to play as well. The silence falls upon everyone. Dido looks at Lord Mansfield, who motions her to go ahead. And to everyone's surprise, Dido plays impressively. The night ends with Lady Mansfield worried about the relationship status and security of Elizabeth, since she has nothing to her name. She shares her mind with Lord Mansfield about the possibility of Dido having thoughts about Oliver Ashford. Lord Mansfield says Dido shouldn't harbor such ideas, as it is up to the Ashfords to decide first. The following day, a portrayer has come to paint Elizabeth and Dido together in one portrait. Elizabeth is thrilled, but Dido is exasperated. She believes the portrayer may not be up to painting a black woman, not to mention in the same portrait as a white lady. She barges into Lord Mansfield's study to complain about it, and finds him in the company of John Davenier. Lord Mansfield says the portrayer shouldn't have any problem with painting Dido, if he is getting paid for it. Davenier pitches in, saying that a lady should be happy with getting painted. Dido taunts him for not being so much of a gentleman the other night. Davenier calls her behavior childlike. Lord Mansfield breaks the heated bickering of the two young people, and asks Dido to take some books to the library. He shifts his attention back to Davenier, to test him with some questions about the law. Davenier mentions song, saying the law should provide certainty. He aspires to make laws one day for the betterment of the world. But Davenier doesn't have the money or high social status needed for a suitable education. He is here to request Lord Mansfield to let him do an apprenticeship under his supervision. Lord Mansfield isn't convinced yet. Davenier is bold enough to remind Lord Chief Justice that he himself was dependent on financial help from Thomas Foley and William Hamilton to study at the bar and become a member of Lincoln's Inn. Lord Mansfield is left speechless. As a last resort, he looks at Dido, who is still in the study gathering the books. He asks her to decide on his behalf. She stays silent, and Lord Mansfield takes that as a yes, in favor of Davenier. Dido is gazing at the portrait of a white man and a black boy, the one she saw when she first came to live in this house. Davenier comes to tell her he is thankful for her support. She says she did no such thing, since she stayed silent. Davenier says her silence was her approval. Elizabeth comes running. Dido introduces her to Davenier. Through Elizabeth, we learn that Dido serves Lord Mansfield as his transcriptionist, and does all the work a male clerk would usually do in such a household. When they find some privacy, Dido asks Davenier about the Zong. He explains it to her. Before she gets to understand why so many of the slaves were killed, they are interrupted by a dinner call. Davenier is curious to know why Dido isn't allowed to dine with her own family. She doesn't like being questioned about a thing she already feels sad about. She offends him with her harsh words about his status in the house. He leaves. Dido looks at a black child holding flowers for a white lady in a portrait. She goes into her room and looks at her dark skin. She hits herself, claws at her face, and weeps. Lord Mansfield is riding horses with his new student, Davenier, who thinks Lord's verdict on the Zong case can help abolish the slave trade in the country. But he remarks that it would also destabilize the economy. Lord Mansfield thinks justice must be served, no matter the cost. Davenier goes on to discuss more of the Zong. The captain of the Zong claims he had to get rid of some slaves to save the rest, because the ship ran out of water supply. The ship owners are asking insurers to pay for the lost cargo. Lord Mansfield is of the opinion that the ship owners knew their nascent trade wasn't going to be that profitable, so they decided to dispose of the cargo to claim insurance, and gain something. Davenier is against the idea of humans being treated as cargo, which was the argument he started the conversation with. The women of the house are admiring Davenier for his personality. When Mary reveals that he is engaged to the daughter of Mr. Beresford, a carriage maker, Dido looks pale. Later, Dido catches Davenier looking at her. She takes hold of him and requests him to tell her what he knows about the Zong. Davenier says he can only tell her what he believes to be the truth. The slaves were sick and were of more use dead than alive. So, the captain murdered them. Insurers aren't willing to pay for goods that the ship crew damaged deliberately. Dido tears up after listening to this. Davenier touches her hand in sympathy. Lord Mansfield is outraged at Davenier for exposing Dido to the harsh reality. Davenier thinks she is mature enough to handle it. Lord Mansfield argues that it is not his place to decide what his niece needs to know. He reminds Davenier of his status as a mere clergyman. Davenier gathers his things to quit. On his way out, he reminds Lord Mansfield that he pays £30 to Dido for her services as an assistant. And that is exactly the amount ship owners are asking the insurers to pay for each murdered slave. Lord Mansfield sternly asks him to stay away from Dido from now. Lady Mansfield is in the parlor to talk to Elizabeth. Elizabeth is finally ready to find herself a suitor and get married. She is going to go to London and socialize. Lady Mansfield tells her that Dido can never find a well-reputed man to marry her, and a man of lower status will be of no use to her in this society. So, it is only Elizabeth who has marriage in her cards. Lord Mansfield is in the drawing room to talk to Dido. He says Elizabeth needs to get married to secure her future, since she doesn't have an inheritance like Dido does. Instead of becoming a wife to a gentleman, Dido needs to take over the role of Mary as a housemaid. Dido is in tears. Elizabeth hugs Dido and says she is sorry. The girls are in a carriage headed to London. Mary and Lady Mansfield are with them. Elizabeth wonders if she is going to meet James Ashford somewhere. She thinks she might fall in love with him. Dido thinks love can drive a person to poverty and heartache. Elizabeth finds Dido fortunate for not needing a husband and his fortune. Elizabeth thinks that being a woman, especially a married woman, is limiting. She feels like men own them. At a place they are staying in London, there is a black maid, Mabel. Dido tries not to make eye contact with her. Mabel offers to help her comb her hair, when Dido is fidgeting with her curls. The Mansfield ladies go to Ashford's. Elizabeth and James look happy spending time together. Lord Ashford finds his son Oliver keenly observing Dido. Lord Ashford thinks the delayed decision of Lord Mansfield about the Zahn case might be because of his inclination towards the mixed-race lady he is rearing in his own house. Oliver goes up to Dido to ask if she is okay with having a walk with him. James disapproves of him, but upon the intervention of Elizabeth, he steps back. Dido accepts Oliver's offer. Elizabeth confesses her feelings to James, and is afraid that he will not honor them. He says he will remain a gentleman to her. Lady Ashford gives a notion to Lady Mansfield, that they are going to get their children married to each other. Oliver expresses his feelings for Dido, saying he doesn't have any problem with her mother being a black slave. He adds that her maternal ancestry will not matter, once his privileged name will become part of hers. Dido seems unconvinced, hurt, and lost. Oliver touches her face. Her eyes meet the unexpected eyes of John Davenier. She slips away from Oliver sneakily and meets Davenier. She is apologetic for being the reason behind him losing his tutelage. They talk about the Zahn. Davenier says he and many other law students are working to prevent insurers from paying the ship owners. Dido says such an act needs a change in the law. She thinks it is such an insult to humanity that a law exists which entails human lives being considered cargo. They look forlorn when they bid farewell, and Elizabeth sees them together. Lady Ashford and James are nothing but dejected to learn that Elizabeth Murray isn't going to inherit anything from Kenwood. She certainly isn't going to get any from her father, either. James Ashford, the eldest son and heir to his father's property, needs more wealth to have a political career. Oliver laughs at his disappointed brother and mother. Lady Ashford finds Dido to be a suitable wife for Oliver. Oliver has good family background, but not fortune, which Dido can bring in for him. Mabel is serving the Mansfields their breakfast. She smiles at Dido, who smiles back. Dido is edgy today, ready to burst any time. She asks Lord Mansfield about the status of Mabel. She then brings up the topic of the Zahn. Lord Mansfield says she is talking like Davenier. Lady Mansfield asks them to stop arguing about such a topic at breakfast. Dido excuses herself and leaves. Lord Ashford has 2 reasons to see Lord Mansfield. He wants to know if having Dido as family is going to influence the Zahn case, from Lord Chief Justice's side. He is worried that England's economy, which is based on the slave trade, might collapse if Lord Mansfield outlaws the slave trade. William Murray, as Lord Chief Justice, has all the power. Lord Mansfield says he upholds what the law says, and he can't be influenced by anything other than the law. If the law says the ship owners are in the right, then nothing can stop William from making the insurers pay their due. Lord Ashford looks relieved. He proceeds to ask for Dido's hand in marriage for his son, Oliver. Oliver comes to propose to Dido. She says yes and wears the engagement ring. Lady Mansfield and Mary are over the moon. Dido feels perfect and thanks Lord Mansfield for allowing this to occur. Elizabeth is despondent. She is still hoping that James will come for her soon. She wants to wait for him, but Lady Mansfield says she can make acquaintances with other fine men instead. Dido happens to find a map in Lord Mansfield's things. The map is allegedly provided by the first mate of the Zahn. Mr. Stubbs. It is proof showing that the captain, Collingwood, passed several seaports but didn't replenish the ship's water supply. So, their claim that they had to kill some of the slaves because of the water shortage renders baseless. Lord Mansfield is aware of this evidence. Dido sneaks out to show the map to Davenir. He warns of the danger she can be in for doing so. Dido wants Davenir to go public with these hidden facts. Amid the conversation, Dido talks about her parents. She feels that women and black people are the same, and their dependence on husbands and masters, respectively. When Davenir praises her, she breaks it to him, that she is marrying Oliver Ashford. She explains that it will give her a respectable name. Davenir thinks she doesn't have to marry someone for that reason. But she says she'd rather go for a man who isn't after her wealth. Dido and Elizabeth have a light argument about what love is. Elizabeth thinks she is in love. Dido says she isn't. Dido says a man shouldn't just be a suitable suitor, but someone you can remain genuine with. They are at a social gathering. Lady Ashford is bold enough to ask Dido when she is going to receive her inheritance. Lady Mansfield is husband hunting for Elizabeth. People seem to find the hopeless endeavor of the Mansfields amusing, and they joke about it. To Elizabeth's delight, Mr. Vaughan, a young man with good prospects, seems interested in getting to know her. Meanwhile, Dido wanders a bit farther from the crowd. James is there already. He accuses her of trapping Oliver. He goes on to utter demeaning words about Elizabeth. Dido disapproves of his manners and his choice of words. Oliver grabs her by arm, mishandles her, and touches her inappropriately. He does so with impunity. Dido is humiliated and in shock. The next few days, Dido has secret meetups with Davenir. She has taken the carriage driver Harry and Mabel in confidence. Davenir tells her that he and Miss Beresford have no interest in marrying each other. They seem to enjoy each other's company. Lord Mansfield is going to give the verdict on the Zong case soon. He doesn't seem to consider the strong evidence provided to him. He can save black people with this single verdict, but it is unlikely that he will do so. Davenir says he can't meddle with influential people. Lord Mansfield sees Dido sneaking in after a secret visit. Elizabeth is sad, having not received any official proposal from James, despite his promises to her. Dido says she will have part of her fortune given to Elizabeth as a dowry. Elizabeth is grateful. She is now sure that James will marry her. Dido says he isn't the right man for her. She tells Elizabeth about him mistreating her and making advancements. Elizabeth accuses her of lying. She thinks James would never touch someone who is an illegitimate child. Dido snaps back at Elizabeth, telling her it is Elizabeth who isn't accepted by her father, and is too poor to find a man to marry her. Elizabeth leaves in tears. Dido takes off her engagement ring. She leaves to meet Davenir. To her surprise, it is Lord Mansfield who opens the carriage door and gets in. He chides Dido for going for a man with no rank, a man who might bring shame to her and her reputation. Davenir can't take this insult. He is displeased at Lord Mansfield for assuming the worst of him, only because he is of lower social status. He asks Lord Mansfield to start valuing human beings for being human beings. All humans, no matter their status, have the same feelings and hearts. Lord Mansfield reminds Davenir of his fiancée. Davenir clarifies that it is not him who chose his fiancée, but his aunt, who believes in wealth and ranks as Lord Mansfield does. Davenir shouts at the top of his lungs that he loves Dido. He confesses so, with utter sincerity. Lord Mansfield has nothing but hate for Davenir, who is not only enticing his niece against the law, but also running a campaign against it. Lady Mansfield is listening to him vent his anger. She reminds him that he once was like Davenir, wanting to change the world for the better. She tells him that he has the power to change the law, and Davenir is merely fighting to break a law that he finds unfair. Lady Mansfield understands the love a woman needs from the man she marries. She understands what Dido sees in Davenir. Lord Mansfield says he loves Dido as if she was his own, and he can't let her ruin her life. James Ashford is going to marry a lady with riches and a name. Elizabeth is devastated upon learning the news. She cries on the shoulder of Dido. Elizabeth advises Dido to go for the man she loves. Dido refuses to marry Oliver. Lady Ashford is here to demand an explanation from Mansfield. Her son is a captain now. He's a gentleman with a name, whom a mixed-race person has rejected. Dido gets up to speak and leaves her speechless, saying she can't marry into a family who looks down upon her bloodline. She doesn't need anyone to grace her presence. She's proud of herself and her black mother. The portrait is complete now. Dido is painted as an equal to Elizabeth. The portrait will be hung at Kenwood. Lord Mansfield is going out of his way to make Dido reside like a free lady in this racist society. He asks Dido why she doesn't feel grounded. Dido is too high in rank to be with the lower class, and too low to mingle with white people. She asks Lord Mansfield if he would have thrown her out, if the law hadn't allowed him to accept her into his house. He compliments her for being courageous. Her point is that a rightful law can govern society to be just. Lord Mansfield is in the bar, where he overhears Davenir speaking. His fight is for humanity, not for the economy. He is fighting against the law that disrupts morality and allows crime to propagate, without fear of consequences. On his way out, Lord Mansfield asks Davenir why he cares so much about this. Davenir requests him to make the world a better place for Dido, through his wise judgment in court. Today is the day of ruling in the Supreme Court. Davenier is there, and Dido manages to get there. Back at home, Elizabeth is meeting Mr. Vaughn, and it looks promising. Lord Mansfield takes his seat. He states that the evidence speaks of the crew of the ship jettisoning the slaves to benefit from the insurance money. Hence, according to the law, the insurers aren't supposed to compensate the ship owners. He adds that it is not only according to the law of England, but also according to the law of morality. To the delight of Davenier and Dido, Lord Mansfield goes on to condemn the slave trade in front of the entire court. The overjoyed Dido runs to hug Davenier. She is holding his hand in front of Lord Mansfield, as she professes her love for Davenier. Lord Mansfield praises Davenier for his determination. He promises to help him get into Lincoln's Inn. He is even willing to have him back under his tutelage. The movie wraps up with Dido and Davenier sharing a sweet intimate moment, truly in love. Their acceptance of each other is above any class or racial discrimination. They embrace each other for whoever they are. One of them is black, and the other one is of low rank. Does that matter anymore? No, what matters is their love.